afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this session on Teradata and AWS, Better Together. It's my privilege to introduce you to Sri Raghavan, who is from AWS. So Sri, a brief introduction from yourself.
Terrific. First of all, thanks very much for coming. My name is Sri Raghavan. I am part of the Amazon Web Services team, responsible for data and analytics and partner integrations on the technical side as well as on the business development side. I used to be, as a lineage, part of Teradata for 9 years and left about 3 years ago. Before I start, really quick, I've done many of these sessions, but I get nervous every time I present in front of an audience. There's butterflies in my stomach. I'll tell you why it started. Very early in my career, I was actually teaching, and one of my very first gigs was as a professor, not a professor, as a teaching assistant at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Go Badgers, by the way, for those of you who are into that. And my very first course was in statistics, and I'll date myself by telling you that back in the day, we didn't have these fancy PowerPoint presentations. For those of you who know, you had this lighted projector where you actually put a transparent sheet underneath the white paper and you actually project it on screen. Do not tell me some of you do not know that, because I know some of you are the same age as I am, but that's how I used to do it. And so this was, I was doing my mean, medians, modes, and all the rest of the statistical stuff. And there was a lady who was in the far corner of this amphitheater kind of a setup who was actually sleeping, drool coming out of the side of her face and whatnot. It disturbs you guys. Let me tell you, don't do that, by the way. And so I walked up to her and she was still sleeping. There was a guy standing next to her and I said, "Hey, would you mind waking her up?" And he said, "Dude, why should I wake her up when you were the one who put her to sleep in the first place?" So that was my auspicious beginning in front of audiences that I didn't particularly appreciate. So I remember that every time I come in front of the audience. I never take my audience for granted, and I just want to tell you how thankful I am that you're here. And I appreciate that we are at the tail end of the day, and I'm the only one stopping in between this and a good gin and tonic. I will be respectful of that, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Let's keep it interactive, but happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks. That was a great introduction, Sri. So I'm Pranay. I'm Director of Product Marketing for everything which is related to AI, ML, and generative AI. And we'll keep this conversational between me and Sri. I'll be asking him questions. Sri will ask me questions back. And we'd also like to be interactive with you. So please feel free to ask the questions whenever you want. So Sri, I would like to first start with this question on, can you tell us about the Teradata and AWS partnership? What it is, where is it, and where it is headed?
Yeah, a couple of things I'd like to point out. By the way, as Pranay said, I just want to reiterate the fact that I'd prefer that you ask questions as we go along. Raise your hand, and that way we'll be able to answer your questions in real time rather than waiting till the very end. But the partnership between AWS and Teradata has been in the making for quite some time. And as you know, AWS is obviously the cloud service providers with a lot of different services. At last count, there were 216 different native services that are available within AWS. Some of them are well known, such as S3 and SageMaker, and there are others which are not quite as well known. But in the course of the last 6 years or so, the partnership has gained an extraordinary amount of steam. So one of the things that we've done with Teradata is sign what's called a strategic collaboration agreement. And the strategic collaboration agreement focuses on 2 areas. One is to provide funding for Teradata for investment purposes to be able to do technical integrations with AWS native services. I mean, S3 is a prime example of that with Vantage Cloud and whatnot. Provide the right kinds of investments to focus those kinds of strategic integrations. Number 2, to provide support from the standpoint of marketing and co-sell. Now, as a result of which, there are some key milestones that have been achieved in the relationship. Number 1, today, Teradata, among all the other partnerships, we have over 200,000 different partners, give or take, service partners as well as regular partners, is number 2 overall in terms of how much it has achieved this year on AWS, particularly in terms of AWS Marketplace. For those of you who do not know what AWS Marketplace is, it is a digital channel by which you can actually acquire software solutions. And the growth has been astronomical. Between last year and this year, the growth has been 142%. And so it's been significantly large, number 1. Number two, there are a couple of extraordinarily large deals which have been signed. In fact, one of the largest ever deals in the marketplace came from Teradata. They've advertised, we've advertised, and so on. So the partnership from the standpoint of investments, from the standpoint of design integrations, from the standpoint of marketing, from the standpoint of co-sell, has been gaining strength over and over again. That is not to suggest that it's all, for lack of a better metaphor, wine and roses everywhere. There are, of course, we see competitive pressures from other CSPs. We could be doing better design integrations, particularly given the generative AI space and so on. But the partnership has garnered the attention of the classic advisory firms like the Gartners, the Forresters, the IDCs, and whatnot. And between the two companies, there's been a lot of recognition for innovative solutions that we brought to the market, and more importantly, for addressing some of the key important business questions that we will focus on later. But long story short, in an unbelievably long-winded manner, it's a strong partnership, and the State of the Union has been getting stronger in the last 4 or 5 years. On the next slide. But I'd like to ask you, Pranay, in terms of your move to the cloud, came roughly, took on a lot of importance in the last 4 or 5 years, and you've done some tremendous investments, particularly in the becoming cloud native.
Yeah.
Could you tell us what you mean by cloud native and why that is such an important journey for you?
Yeah, sure. From Teradata point of view, the journey to the cloud has been pretty awesome, and thanks to the partnership with AWS, we have been providing solutions which are scalable as well as highly performant to our customers. So as you all know, right, our key product is called Vantage Cloud, and it comes in 2 versions, Vantage Cloud Lake and Vantage Cloud Enterprise. And you can do various stuff using this. You can build various architectures. For example, you can build data warehouses, you can build data lakes, as well as you can carry out various workloads, such as data engineering workloads, or even operational, as well as AI, ML. And recently, as you all know, right, we also introduced ClearScape Analytics. So ClearScape Analytics is part of Vantage Cloud, and it is one of the most scalable analytics which is available inside the database. And this helps to solve really complex problems at scale. And you must have just heard this announcement, which was just yesterday, that Teradata released the first in-database AutoML in the world. So this helps to solve really complex problems which require, for example, few models to millions of models. And thanks to the scalability which is provided by AWS, I see this partnership growing in strength and helping our customers have real business value by solving some complex challenges.
I think the cloud, and to add to the point, right, the cloud native part makes a big difference, because as you, the audience very well knows, there are features within cloud native deployments, such as object stores, such as being able to take advantage of massively scalable AI platforms. All those things are being taken advantage of by Vantage Cloud. Like, it's truly meant for the cloud. So what that means is that it increases your performance, it increases your flexibility, it increases your scalability, and by the way, it also makes sure that you pay only what you consume. And it is not one of those models where it's you buy a certain chunk of compute and storage, and regardless of whether you use it or not, you're screwed. This is truly Teradata's approach to the cloud. It's truly taking advantage of all those cloud native features, provide the right kinds of billing, provide the right kinds of consumption metrics, and take advantage of all the native features like data lakes and whatnot as a part of that.
So Sri, you mentioned different features. So can you give us a brief overview of different services and features which are available within AWS?
To be perfectly candid, this is not exactly the greatest slide, even though I constructed this slide. This is not particularly something that I could do a better job of this. There are certain things that I like to highlight. In particular, for instance, and let me take the generative AI approach to this, right? So as a part of the evolution of not only this relationship, but the overall AWS architecture, we've focused on 3 specific areas as far as generative AI is concerned, which we'll go into a little bit more detail. One is, of course, providing a service where you can take advantage of natively built LLMs as well as other LLMs that we've sourced from different companies. The biggest part of which I want to focus on today is this thing here called Amazon Bedrock, which is a centerpiece of the AWS architecture, and AWS architecture as it applies to Teradata. Simply put, Amazon Bedrock is our generative AI service, which is available through an API that you can access. And there are three components to this generative AI architecture. Number one, we have natively built chipsets, compute and infrastructure chipsets to be able to process vast amounts of data, regardless of what the data type is, multimodal data. So that's one component of Amazon Bedrock, which is a service. The second component, of course, is our ability to be able to access different kinds of LLMs. So Amazon has its own large language model called Titan, Amazon Titan, which is part of Bedrock, which obviously is sourced from publicly available data with about 1 trillion parameters that we have natively built. Now, we recognize that one large language model doesn't really do service towards the ability to address different kinds of use cases, particularly across different verticals and so on. So we have the ability for you to access within the same platform Hugging Face models, Mistral.ai models, Llama, which is of course Facebook's model, and so many different kinds of models that are available for you to address this multimodal capability. So that's the second feature of Amazon Bedrock. The third feature is the ability for you to develop applications using Bedrock as a service. So for instance, if you want a speech assistant, like an Alexa, for instance, is built on top of Bedrock using Bedrock-like capabilities. And you can build different kinds of applications as a part of that. So what I'm trying to say here is Vantage connects, as Pranay will talk later, Vantage connects to one of the core features of AWS's architecture, which includes a bunch of other things like elastic block storage, native object storage, which is S3, which is our data lake, Bedrock, and about 200 other services that could potentially connect. And now, obviously, not every ISV needs all of these different services, a significant portion of it, of course. We have the ability to connect, and they have the ability to integrate with these services, which they have in the form of design wins. This is a core part of the new sets of capabilities we're coming up with for integrations into Teradata.
Yeah, thanks, Sri. So at this point of time, if it's okay to make it interactive, can I ask the audience?
Absolutely can.
Which of these services have you used with Teradata Vantage? Just an open question to all of you. We have some gifts also for the person who comes out with the first question.
Yeah, Lambda is, and forgive me for that, Lambda is, of course, a core part of a strategy, right? A core part of architecture, which is typically used for automatic provisioning. Now, there are other uses of Lambda as well, but the nice thing about Lambda is that it can be used for automatic provisioning, but also optimized provisioning, right? Sometimes you don't need to provision more compute just because you know what, it comes in chunks, like some of your competitors do, some of Teradata's competitors do. So Lambda is a perfect function for you to actually optimize the traffic across the different compute clusters to make sure that you don't end up with a solid, huge-ass bill at the end of the day. So Lambda is a very good example of that.
But we have used Vantage on GCP, not exactly on AWS.
We don't care about them. They're crazy. They don't know who their parents
Just
are.
I can't comment on the other services.
Yeah. Not a terrible thing to say for me, but I will say
Thank
that.
you.
All right, thanks. We're going to reserve a prize for you for asking the question. Moving on.
Somebody has a question?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. No, so this is turning back to you. I'm sorry, this is an interactive. So I want to ask you this question because it's important, given what I said about the connection to the different services and so on, you have done a lot of the hands-on work in terms of the end-to-end data strategy. Explain to us what it is you've done and particularly the customers that you've done it with.
Yeah, sure. So data strategy itself is a big subject, and there are many aspects to that, but I would like to focus on two things. So first is the technical end-to-end integration. So as you can see, right, we have different Amazon services which are providing a source to Teradata Vantage Cloud, such as Amazon Aurora or Amazon DynamoDB, as well as the other ones like Amazon Kinesis. This data kind of lands into object storage like S3, which is then consumed by Vantage Cloud. And on top of that, we apply some various analytics using ClearScape Analytics, so things like machine learning and artificial intelligence, which produces signals when I say like outputs or business outcomes, which are then consumed by either by people or by apps or by other devices. Now, the second aspect of the data strategy, I would like to also bring in this point of view of trusted data, trusted AI. So as we also saw in the morning session today, that it's also important in the world of AI to ensure that the data and outputs which are produced are trusted. And we have different capabilities which are available in Vantage Cloud and which are seamlessly integrated with AWS services in order to make sure that the data is integrated, it is bias-free. So we have things like Query Grid and Connected Data Foundation, which is built upon S3, as well as other functions like Enterprise Feature Store and Security Certification, which ensures that the data is a trusted data. The second one is related to trusted AI. Right? So here, things like ensuring that the models are well managed, they are well monitored, as well as they are explainable. So just to give you an example, that we highly also focus on the large language models which are provided by Bedrock, because all the models which are available on Bedrock are explainable. If you ask a question that, okay, give me a sentiment analysis of this particular text, it will give you the sentiment analysis, but it will also give you an explanation why the sentiment was predicted to be positive or negative. So this is a very nice feature of Amazon Bedrock. In addition, it's also important to operationalize the output at scale. And when I say this is very important, because trust is based on things which work, right? You'll always trust things which are scalable and which work. And thanks to the partnership of AWS and Vantage, we can provide business outcomes which are working, which are performant, which are scalable, which in fact drives the trust back to AI.
Hey, I'd like to stay on the slide for a second, if you will. I'd like to highlight these two things, the in-database machine learning functions and the large language models, right? Before you get into those two things, the premise that we all go into when we do artificial intelligence or machine learning for that matter is that you have damn good data in front of you. But that is not always true. Your application of large language models, machine learning algorithms, are only good as the data that you put them in. When you put garbage in, you get garbage out. I think this is where the partnership needs to be looked at from that standpoint. Teradata is one of the foremost companies in terms of being able to curate and securize very large volumes of data of different kinds, shapes, structures, and whatnot, right? And some of these in-database machine learning functions also include data preparation functions. So I've worked on these on the technical side. So for instance, if you have HLN data, which a lot of pharmaceutical companies have, right? So for those of you who are Grateful Dead fans, when you look at HLN data, it's like a stream of consciousness, Grateful Dead, Jerry Garcia lyric. It's terrible. Nobody knows what it is, or Bob Dylan lyric if you're up for it. Two of my favorites, by the way. It is very hard to parse it. But when you have these kinds of HLN parser functions, which is in database, you're able to parse the data. You can put structure in it, then you can feed it well into the LLMs. That's the beauty of these two organizations coming together with the technologies to address. You can take any kind of data, put them through the preparatory functions, the prep functions, the in-database machine learning functions, which is part of ClearScape Analytics, push them into the large language models, which come from AWS, different multimodal models, take the output of that, store it back into the Teradata platform, operationalize it at scale. And we've done that for a number of use cases to predict things like customer churn, to predict the likelihood of fraud detections. And the cleaner the data, the reduced likelihood of hallucinations that come out of that, right? This is an often understated and overlooked part of the platform that is very important, we can't say enough of. And I think that is a huge highlight that we need to bring forward.
Yeah. So if you prefer, we can ask an interactive question to the audience. What do you think, as per you, is trusted data or trusted AI?
Pranay, just somebody, please answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Political answer, trusted data, whatever the customer trusts. So if we go together to customers and they trust that we can do it for them. So, but I know that technically trusted data means secure data, that we have to have lots of security around it. So.
I agree security is a big part of it, but I will push back on that notion respectfully. Yes, security is a big part of the trust, right? Obviously, if you breach trust and security, nobody can. But I also think even if you have secure data, if there is garbage in the data, you can't trust it. So it's a question of data fidelity as well as data security as far as I'm concerned. It's a mix of both that you need to have before you actually are able to feed it into LLMs. Absolutely. Absolutely. I've worked with data, for instance, right? I used to work on this massive database coming from Axiom, which works with financial institutions. And for instance, you would find for the same individual 3 different addresses at the same time period. Now, it's possible that they could have 3 different houses and whatnot, but sometimes, more often than not, we found out that the data was very corrupt, that somebody hadn't updated the US postal listings and whatnot, right? That's a classic case of data being terrible. So now how can you trust it? How do I provide you the right kinds of recommendation engines based on your geography? Do I even know you live there? I don't. So those are some of the things which we need to worry about.
Yeah. All right, so Shri, a question to you. Can you tell us on why this combination of Vantage, ClearScape Analytics, and AWS makes it the best data and analytic platform?
Yeah, a couple of things. Again, a very busy slide, though this time I'm happy with the slide. But again, I'll deconstruct it in this time, and then we can go into deeper parts of it as and when you need. So the combination of the ability to be able to process data at scale and speed with built-in analytics capabilities and modeling capabilities is a big deal. This is, I mean, ever since the time I worked on these products back in Teradata and now parroting the mantra on the AWS side, these 2 things are paramount, right? So one of those things is, of course, the fact that you have these different data stores that are both relational as well as non-relational, and of course, you know, with our own native object stores, which is S3, which is, you know, in Amazon, we call S3 our data lake, even though it's an object store. The combination of these different sources of data of different types and the easy access to it is very important. Now, access is enabled also by Teradata technology. What do I mean by that? In Teradata, there's a technology called QueryGrid, which is data virtualization. For those of you who know what this is, I beg you to bear with me as I explain this. For those of you who do not know, hopefully this makes sense. Data virtualization allows you to be able to pick data wherever it's located. So you could have 20 different sources in different geographies and of different types. QueryGrid makes sure that you don't have to copy all of the data from the sources to another system and bring it all together to be able to do the analytics. That virtualization really makes a difference where you can pick data of different types to be able to do the analytics, number 1. Number 2, this is a big part of the work we all did. Pranay has contributed handsomely to this, as well as guys like Daniel and a whole bunch of others have done enormous amount of work. This is where you are able to pick and choose what I call multi-genre analytics. Analytics, which are machine learning, data prep functions, now large language models, all of them coming together to be accessible from one platform with all the data of your choice, and then to be able to run the modeling on the platform, as well as, more crucially and perhaps more importantly, to do the operationalization across billions and billions of records. One of the examples that I worked on is for a very large retail store which had thousands of SKUs, and they wanted to model activity across the different SKUs, and so every SKU had a different model, and they had to compare it over time to see how well it performs and whatnot. This is a classic platform with 2 technologies coming together, which is very seamless. You don't actually see the Amazon part, nor do you see the Teradata part. It's abstracted, where you can actually pick and choose the functions and run it on data, and to be able to provide models by SKU, for instance, and compare the models and how it performs and whatnot. That is something which you can do here, which showcases the power of the partnership. Of course, as you see on the left side, we have data sources, Oracle, Workday, ServiceNow, Cisco, and so many other different sources. Obviously, the slide doesn't contain all of them. bring it all together, bring the pipeline of activity together so that you can actually create the right data structures to feed into the models, and then bring it back to operationalization. That's all done within one platform. And that's the huge power of what we're able to do together.
Can you also talk us through some of the use cases, some customer success stories about usage of the two platforms?
There are quite a few of these use cases. I mean, I put 3 here simply because I did not know which 3 to select, and so I picked the ones that I use on a regular basis, like Hertz and Groupon. Our family, I think I became bankrupt because of those. But Hertz, for instance, it's about, they were, in this case, inventory was a big part of their issue. They didn't quite know where to stock cars, or they were doing it and there were a lot of inefficiencies because they weren't able to match traffic back to the types of cars, and they weren't able to figure out the right kinds of traffic times to account for across the different outlets in the United States. So they used Vantage on AWS to be able to model, but more importantly also to create the right kinds of business reporting that was necessary for them to do all those things. In the case of Groupon, it was about how do I, for those of you who've used Groupon, I'm sure you know it's about being able to take coupons at certain discounted values and buy products and services and whatnot. And the question is, how do I serve the right kinds of coupon based on your activities, based on your history, based on your profile and whatnot. And as you can imagine, it's a very large database. And so what they did was they used, again, Vantage on AWS to be able to put the right kinds of models and create the recommendations necessary in real time. Brinker, I didn't know this when I worked with Brinker in the first time, but they apparently own, now I know they own a lot of these restaurants like Chili's and Maggiano's and all that in the United States. Again, this was a question of being able to forecast. So they had a lot of supply chain problems in certain stores. They accumulated a lot of the raw materials that went into the cooking, but then didn't have commensurate traffic. And in certain other stores, they had a lot of traffic, but they weren't able to serve their products on time. So again, this was a question of how do you create a good, robust forecasting solution that accounts for that optimization with both traffic and service levels that customers came to expect of them. And there are many such examples. You have done some work with customers like Mutual of Omaha, and there's one more I know. Can you talk about what it is you did and how Vantage helped?
Yeah, sure. So this is a customer success story around the Mutual of Omaha, so which is an financial company, and they wanted to modernize their analytics platform, and they wanted to move towards cloud, but at the same time, the objective was also to use machine learning models to improve the customer experiences. So this project was quite successful. The migration took place in just 6 weeks' time, very rapidly. And what they used to do is they used to use Vantage in database functions for data preparation. Then they prepare all the feature stores, enterprise feature store, send the data to AWS SageMaker. So SageMaker is one of the very popular tools used by data scientists to create really powerful models. And once the models have been created, they kind of export it back into Vantage and operationalize it. So it's a very successful story, which is centered around improving customer experiences through use of machine learning. And the second success story is, let me come to this story a bit later on. Yeah, let me take this one. So this one is for an automotive manufacturer, and they had this use case on how to resolve anomaly detection, detect anomalies in a supply chain. So if you can imagine, right, this is one of the largest manufacturing suppliers, and their assembly lines are quite big. And they have these robots who are making these spot weldings. And the spot welding is such that it's very difficult to determine if the spot welding has gone wrong or right. But if you detect it, it will be at a very later stage, like when the car is shipped, and that could be a catastrophic thing, because if you discover defects later on, it's the very category, you have to recall the cars and stuff like that. So here the project was how to predict if any spot welding has gone wrong. And here you can see the scale of data was huge. You had 3.2 billion sensor data reads every day. And thanks to S3 storage, they could manage this data on a very high scale. Then when it comes to modeling, this was also a huge task at hand. Just for data preparation itself, they used 9 million models just for data preparation. And then for making the final prediction, they used about 40,000 models. So you can see the scale of this thing wouldn't have been possible if there was no AWS, if there was no scale, right? So this is a very good success story which shows on how to use AI ML at scale.
There are two, in addition to the analytics set in the previous slide, Pranay talked about two things which are very important as well. One is, of course, the marketplace. Acquiring the software through the marketplace is a really big deal for a lot of our joint customers. Why? Because it makes the purchasing process so much more fluid, and there are certain benefits in terms of, for those of you who are on the business side of the fence who are actually purchasing products, there's something called EDP, enterprise discounts. So when you purchase software to Amazon, through a marketplace, Amazon, you are given certain discounts that are not available when you purchase it as an on-prem solution. And I was in the Mutual of Omaha, EBC, in Seattle, and this became a really big issue with Mutual of Omaha. They said, look, this is exactly what we want to do, take advantage of, and thanks for doing this, and so on. So these are important benefits as well, besides obviously the powerful high-octane analytics that you get out of the solution.
Shri, let's move on to use cases related to generative AI. Right? So can you tell us on what kind of use cases are you seeing in this space?
Yeah, look, there are, and my intention is not to bore you by reading through these slides, right? But I will say that in the course of the development for generative AI in the last 18 months or so, the classic generative AI use case that we addressed and we developed, just like everybody else, was chatbots, how to be able to respond to questions that are being asked. And in that vein, we developed our own AI assistant called Amazon Q. And of course, we took advantage of some of the native SageMaker capabilities to deliver large language models and whatnot. Yes, all that's done. But we strongly believe that just being a chatbot kind of a company, responding to chats in real time, goes only so far, that you need actually meaningful use cases you can address across the different verticals, right? And as you can see, there are a lot of different verticals. If we go back to the previous slide, just really give me one. For instance, healthcare and life sciences, right? Some of these things I've been involved in. Personalized medicine was a big deal. I'll contrast it. Back in my day when I started my career in analytics, I used to work for Bristol Myers Squibb, and we used to develop drug regimens for different kinds of cancer patients, where you actually had to get cancer apparently for different people affects them differently, and there are a lot of physiological features that actually interact with cancer and to make it very unpredictable. There were a number of different variables that we had to bring into consideration using a large SAS model to be able to make those kinds of predictions and to be able to create the drug regimens. That is so much more easy to do today with large language models, because now we have the ability to take on millions of different parameters to be able to come up with this personalized drug regimens for every single patient, rather than doing the Pareto optimal 80-20 kind of rule, right? So today we're able to do that with personalized medicine. Also in financial services, next best action, credit scoring, being able to determine what kind of transaction is fraudulent versus not. This is where the issue of false positives, aka hallucinations, become very important. The more fidelity your data has, the greater is the likelihood that the conclusions that you come up with in terms of the nature of the transactions is better, right? And that's why you need a damn good data platform with enough analytics that go beyond it. So we've done, as you can see, across the different verticals, media, retail, financial services, we have 47 established use cases with clear results that we're very happy to tell you and talk about. If you can go to the next slide, you will see it's not just verticals, but also the different kinds of areas. And I deliberately didn't put about 6 other slides which has got all these things. Boosting employee productivity. For those of you who attended Martin Wilcox's presentation this morning, right, it follows the same classic example. You start off by doing better things with your services. That's your Horizon 1. Horizon 2, you do better with your products and services and perhaps expand out the services. The third you do is a fundamental shift in your business, path-breaking change. Those are all the things, different horizons we're able to address with our generative AI capabilities that we bring to the market today.
Yeah.
And you did something not too recently,
Yeah.
and I mean, not in the very near past. You've done work with a large financial institution.
Yeah, so we have recently done projects on analyzing customer complaints at a few of the major banks. So customer complaints is one of the most important things to be taken care, because there was a survey which said that the people prefer their complaints to be resolved faster. Right? So what we have done is, and complaints can come from various sources, like they can come from voice or text or chat, right? And what we try to do is we use the power of AWS Bedrock to come out with this different kind of analytics, like sentiment analysis, topic modeling, classification, clustering, summarizing, speech analysis. And believe me, sentiment analysis is very difficult thing to do. Like in the past, if you take 2 or 3 years back, there used to be projects to do sentiment analysis because the texts are very vague, they're very unstructured, people can put emojis and stuff like that. But now you just make a call to Bedrock and you get the sentiment of any text, right? So pretty powerful.
And voice.
And voice also, yeah. So when I say sentiment, it could be text, it could be voice. Right? We also try to detect the topics which are there in the complaints. We also try to do clustering. So clustering is all about identifying similar complaints together so that they can be effectively managed. One of the cool things of what we see about Bedrock is this summarization, because we have seen complaints which can be like 100 words long, but you can summarize it with LLMs into just 2 or 3 sentences. So this is very useful for an agent who is going to manage these customer complaints. So we take all this thing, but what is more important is to augment your customer 360-degree so that it can be operationalized to see what is the next best action. Now, let's conclude, Sri. I think we went through what is the value of partnership, we went through the products, we went through why AWS and Vantage are best to deliver business value, as well as we went through generative AI use cases. I would like to just set the scene of what is next, like how can the customer over here can take advantage of what these services and what is the call to action for them.
A couple of things I'd like to encourage, but Matt told me 5 minutes, so I'll make it just really quick. It's important for me to ask this question. How many of you have actually experimented with AWS AI services? Okay. Let me suggest to you one quick way to start. There's something called Amazon Party Rock, which I should have put here, but I didn't. Amazon Party Rock is a very cool interface-driven AI service that's available as a part of Bedrock, where you can actually create your own application. So one of the things, I'm big into music, for instance. So I got a data set of different classic rock bands to see, which ones are connected to the other, and I got a really strange result because my data was bad, that the Rolling Stones were connected to the Beastie Boys, which in my wildest imagination, I could not have predicted that, but that's because the data was bad. But it was kind of a nice ability for me to take an existing service and to be able to mix and match it. So think about it, try working on Party Rock. But a couple of things are important. Fastest adoption in the AWS cloud I've seen with Teradata, which is just simply fantastic. Customers like you are able to take advantage of your existing purchasing power agreements with AWS to be able to buy products in marketplace and have flexible billing and so on and so forth. To me, as a relapsed data scientist, this is a really big part of the work we do, which is the ability to provide you services to integrate with. Even before Bedrock, there were certain services that Pranay was talking about, like SageMaker which was very important for us to be able to access machine learning model and then push it back into Teradata for operationalization. Like I said, there are about 216 different services, but these are really, really massive and important services, a subset of which Teradata is using. Last but not the least is your ability to access data from anywhere. It doesn't have to be only on the AWS data lake. It can be on other source systems, but the idea is that you shouldn't have to make copies of the data to bring it to source to be able to do the kinds of analytics that Pranay was talking about. You can access data from anywhere, and that's a big deal.
Yeah. So as a call to action, I would like to give these 2 points. So first of all, whatever we have talked about, you can try it out right now. We have almost about 80 plus demos which are available at this ClearScape and experience. So if you scan this QR code, you'll go to the website. And secondly, all the use cases, all the generative AI use cases which we talked about also can be found on that particular QR code. And we will be happy to discuss with you on how we can help you implement AI, ML, and generative AI, get started. Because if you have data in Vantage Cloud on AWS, it's very easy to get started with these use cases as well as these real-world accelerators which are already available. And with this, I would like to we have just few minutes, but I would like to just open up for any questions you might have.
And if not, we're always available. If not today, at a different time, you can always get in touch with us, and we're happy to have separate calls and all those stuff to talk to you anytime. But we'd like to say thank you very much. I know it's been a long couple of days, and you've had many different sessions that you've attended and absorbed. I take it as a personal honor that you came to our session to talk to us, and for that, I'm profoundly very thankful. And without customers, we're nothing. And so we always believe that customers come first, and anything we can do to help you in your journey, analytics journey, in your data journey, we're it. Happy to help. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
So just before you leave, if you wouldn't mind going into the app and filling in the survey, and I think there's a survey that's just come out for the whole event as well. So if you can do that, would be grateful. Thank you very much.